Hello there, ICS3C folks. This is a video. This isn't what we're doing here. I'm going to show you my program that does this. I'm going to step you through it, um, not because it's an important program, but what we're going to talk about today is the style of my code. But I want to show you that it works and all that business. So here's my code, and yours can look different. That's fine. There's lots of different ways to solve a problem. This program has a function. This part's a function. This is in Notepad++, which is kind of neat because you can open and close stuff. You see this function has 9 lines. Um, and what this print stars function does, it reads in a value, and then it has a for loop in here that builds a series, a string of stars that's how many long. And then after that loop, this loop here builds that string and then outputs it to the console. And that's the end of the function. Then later on, the main part of the program is another little for loop that starts at 6, goes down by 1, and just prints out that many stars. So it prints out 6 stars, and then it prints out 5 stars, and so on. Now, I'll show you that it works. All right, F12. And there it is. It worked. Did exactly like it was supposed to. And so, so far we'd think, it's a pretty good program because it does what it was asked to do. But what I want to mention is that this program, although there are some good parts about it, there are also some very bad parts about it. Um, and one of the ideas is, if I didn't explain this to you, it might be very difficult for you to read and understand what it's doing because it's all computer code. There are no comments to help you understand what each part of the program is doing. Comments are an important thing. Um, Comments help um, you explain your code to me or to anybody else that will read your code, but it also will help you explain your code to you later on in your life. Like when you write the code, everything seems to be going good in your brain. You write the code and it makes sense. You get it to work and all is great. You look back later and you've got no clue what you did. That's because I haven't commented the code. So I've got another little file here that mentions about comments. First of all programs that are decent sized programs, and our programs are starting to be decent sized, should have a header. And a header is in remember in Java there's 2 ways to put comments. I can put them with this is a comment like that, okay? And then that's only a 1 line comment. If I start typing here, that's not in a comment anymore. But I can also use in JavaScript this uh, slash star, and then everything there becomes another comment until I undo that. So then anything in between here is actually a comment. And here's a style if we have a whole chunk of comments. And this is what I'm going to call a header. A header and should be in every one of your decent sized programs that you use. First of all, you have a purpose. This is prints out a pattern of stars, and then this is also the warm-up day 63 question. Then you have, by the way, these stars aren't necessary, but it kind of makes it look nice. The programmer, that's you or me. And then the date or version, and so on. Okay? You can add as much detail. Usually you have the program name here. Okay? And this is called a header. And that just allows you to remember what the program is supposed to be doing and so on. So that's one thing that you have to include in your in your programs from now on is a header. Now, by the way, I don't want you to go back and fix all your old programs and have this. I mean, from now on, when we're writing decent sized programs, this is what you should be doing. you should have comments for each major code block. What do I mean by that? Well, every function, for instance, should have a comment. So I'm going to put a comment in here about, this function prints out how many stars. And I could even go a little bit further by I want to press enter and get another line in here. Let's go right there. By constructing a string of stars. And are there any more code chunks? Well, if I wanted to, I could say what this loop does, for instance. This loop constructs the stars. And of course, this part down here, I said this part was my main program. Main program. The loop calls print stars 6, then 5, then 4, ... times. And this may be more detail than you'll want to put in, but that's completely up to you. This is pretty good. So when else would we want to put some comments in? Well, it says any tricky bits, any little tricky bits. So what's this? This maybe looks tricky. Maybe I want to explain it to myself. So this is adding an extra star to the current output, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, there we go. And so are there any other tricky bits? Maybe not, but anything that you wanted to add so you could understand it later, or if you think that I need to understand it, you should add a comment. Variables unless obvious. So what does that mean? Well, we had some variables. So output isn't very obvious with, well, it's going to be output. We're going to print it out to the screen, but start with null. That's a nothing in the string, null string, with null, and add stars. So that'll help me figure out why I started with null. Do you have to put a comment on every line? No, that's not what I'm talking about. And by the way, this is probably more comments than you'd ever need to do, but I'm making a point here, aren't I? And that's a lot of comments. It says use meaningful variable names. So notice this function name print stars. It describes what the function is doing. It's printing stars. If you just call it, function 1, well, that's not a very good descriptive name. How many? That's pretty good because that tells us how many stars we're printing. Counter, okay, I know what counter is. Output, that's fairly meaningful variable name. There's not very many other variables there, but bad variable names would be things like N, A, these ones are bad variable names. But just because we don't know what they're supposed to stand for, right? If N stands for number, then why aren't we using the word number? Maybe the only exception is often in for loops, we know there's going to be a counter, so we can get away with calling it I or J or K. And everyone in computer science sort of accepts that bad variable name I when we're using it in a counter for a loop. So that's probably the only exception. Indent. Now, what's nice, I think in JSBin and in Notepad++, it indents automatically for you. So notice that that's nice that it indents, but if it didn't, and I can unindent just by moving this all back, why do we want to indent? Why do we care? Well, and I'm not going to do this for my whole program, But look at this all of a sudden. This is much, much more difficult to read. I can't really tell where the function starts and where it ends. Where does the for loop end and the for loop start? That's difficult to see. And so I should be indenting all the structures. And notice that automatically indented the structure. Um, where was the, I goofed that up because there was a thing on the end here. Um, there it is right there. That that extra end colon or that end bracket should have been there. And there, now I can see them. Now I can see where my structures end. My code gets easier to read. Okay, so I can see my function goes from there to there. By the way, I want to just mention when I'm writing a function or I'm writing a for loop or even an if statement. So if I say if, and you don't have to do anything here. If blah, and I'm and I know that it's a structure. What I like doing is notice that it indented automatically. I like putting a little comment that says end if here, so I know that this end bracket goes with this if, rather than an end for or an end function. So this is end print stars, and I can add that, and my code becomes easier to read. Often a bug will show up if you're missing a bracket. Okay, and it's nice using JSBin. It's nice using Notepad++ because it takes care of some of this for you. But in Code Academy, it doesn't. So when you're writing your structures, after an end bracket, write what it's ending, or comment an ending, because that'll help you. There's a little trick. It says use appropriate white space, not too much, not too little. So white space are essentially blank lines. Notice that up here I had the start quote up there, which is a common thing in computer sciences to have the start curly bracket up there, but up here I didn't. So it's kind of on one case I did and one case I didn't. Usually you want to stay consistent. And I personally, this is my own personal style, I like having the start and end curlies at the same level on the screen, like this and like this, so I can see them. That's up to you. What I mean by white space, though, are blank lines. Blank lines can make your code easier to read, even though it doesn't affect the running of the program at all. This here is probably too many blank lines. It's just a big white space, and it makes your code look, well, unprofessional. But leaving a blank line in between major structures makes sense, okay? That makes sense to do that. That's appropriate white space. Okay, so I think that's all I had to say, and that was maybe a longer video. Yeah, longer video than I expected, but lots of important points. So as your JavaScript programs get bigger, as those things in Code Academy get worse, help yourself out by indenting and using white space. And certainly when you hand in JavaScript programs to me, I'll want to see comments and I'll want to see a header. Okay? All right, that's it. I think you have an exercise to do for today's warm-up.